mind?
So hello everyone, my name is Satyar Rahman. I'm Rehan level school foundation level student. So today my topic is uh, air breathing life into language. So my first question is, what is air made of?
Air is mostly nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen takes up about 78%, and oxygen is about 21%. The rest is a tiny mix of argon, carbon dioxide, and other trace gases. It's a pretty wild mix when you think about it. Do you have another question for your presentation?
Why is air and tile of for life?
I'm not quite sure I follow you there. Could you say that again?
How does air help humans speak?
Well, it's all about the mechanics. Air is the fuel for your voice. When you breathe out, that air pushes through your vocal cords in your larynx, making them vibrate. And that's what actually creates the sound. Without that steady stream of air, there's no vibration. And without vibration, there's no voice. It's basically like a wind instrument, just built right into your body. Do you want to know more about how the air is shaped into actual words?
What role does air play in language?
Wait, did you mean air as in the air we breathe, or are we actually talking about airplanes now?
What role does air play in language?
Air is basically the invisible stage. Everything happens on. Since it's a medium that carries sound waves from one person to another, without it, we'd all be in total silence. But beyond the physics, I wonder if you're looking for how it affects the way we express things, like the difference between a whispered secret and a shout. Which direction are you headed with this for your presentation?
How do the lungs use air during speech?
Your lungs are basically like a set of bellows. They store the air and then push it out in a controlled way so you can keep talking without running out of breath mid sentence. It's all about that diaphragm muscle at the bottom pushing up to regulate the flow. Do you want to dive into how singers or public speakers train their lungs to handle longer phrases?
Why is breathing important for communication?
This more than just keeping us alive, it's actually the rhythm of the conversation. Breathing gives us those natural pauses that let the other person process what we've said. And it's where we signal things like a sigh of frustration or a sharp intake of breath when we're surprised. It's almost like the punctuation of spoken language. Does that fit into the angle you're taking for your presentation?
Okay. So what
You're
happens when
welcome. What's
air
next?
passes through the vocal cords?
When air hits those vocal cords, it's like a tiny high speed vibration. The cords snap open and shut really quickly, chopping the air into pulses. That's what creates the actual sound wave before it even reaches your mouth and throat to be shaped into words. It's kind of like how a guitar string works, just with air and muscle instead of wire.
How are sounds created using air?
It all comes down to how you shape that air as it leaves your body. After it vibrates through your vocal cords, you use your tongue, teeth, and lips to block or redirect the airflow. For example, if you push the air through your lips, you get up sound. But if you let it flow through your teeth, you get an S sound. It's essentially a game of sculpting air into different shapes to make distinct sounds.
Okay. So what
Glad
is the
it's clicking.
connection between air and voice?
Basically, air is the raw material. Without it, the voice doesn't even exist. You can think of the air as the energy in the vocal cords, as the instrument. The voice is just what happens when that energy meets the instrument. Do you want to look at how different emotions like anger or excitement, change how we use that air?
So how do different language use airflow differently?
Ah, that's a great question. Some languages use clicks, like in Kosa, where they actually create pockets of vacuum in the mouth to make sounds. Others use ejectives, which is basically using the glottis to push air out with a lot more force than a normal breath. It's wild how different cultures have found different ways to sculpt the same air into meaning. Do you want to know about any other specific language sounds that might be unusual?
Um, Why do some sounds require more air than others?
It usually comes down to how much you're obstructing the flow. For sounds like pup or tart, you're building up a little pressure and then releasing it all at once in a burst. But for something like a long vowel sound, the air just flows steadily. The more you resist the air or the more force you use to push it out, the more expensive the sound is for your lungs. Does that make sense for the way you're explaining it in your presentation?
What are womblers, and how does air help produce them?
I think you might have missed a word there, but I'm guessing you're asking about specific sounds, maybe consonants or vowels.
Yeah, yeah.
Since they both use air differently, the vowels are more open and flowing, while consonants are where you're actually blocking the air to create that click or pop. Does that sound like what you were getting at?
How are constitution format using airflow?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by format using airflow in this context. Are you talking about the technical way sounds are structured, or maybe how you're organizing the air for your presentation?
How is aspiration in language?
Aspiration is basically that little puff of air that comes out right after certain sounds. Think of the pen in pot versus the pin spot in pot. There's a much stronger burst of air. It's a subtle thing, but in some languages, that puff can actually change the meaning of a word entirely. Do you want to know about languages where aspiration is a deal breaker for the meaning?
What is aspiration in language?
If you mean my
No,
own
no, no,
personal
no, no,
goal,
no, no. Which language use aspirated sound?
I think we're having a bit of a mix up. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Are you talking about, oh, which languages use the most expressive sounds, or maybe which ones use air in the most unusual ways?
How does whispering differ from normal speech?
When you whisper, you're actually bypassing the main event. Instead of letting the air vibrate your vocal cords to create a tone, you keep them partially open. This lets the air flow through without that snap and shut vibration. So you just get the sound of the air rushing through your throat and mouth. It's essentially speech without the music. Could you want to know why some people can whisper louder than others?
How does breath control matter in public speaking?
It's everything. It's what keeps people from zoning out. When you control your air, you can play with your volume and your pace, which is how you create emphasis and keep the audience engaged. If you just drone on at one speed, you're basically a human lullaby. Do you want to know how to use those pauses to make a point hit harder?
How do singers use air to improve their voice?
I think you're asking how someone can use their air to improve their speaking, right? It's mostly about diaphragmatic breathing, breathing from your belly rather than your chest. It gives you a much bigger reservoir of air, so you don't feel like you're running out of breath at the end of a sentence, and it makes your voice sound way more supported and confident. Do you want a few tips on how to actually practice that?
How does breathing affect for through
The more air you
intonation.
push out, the more power. Exactly. The more air you're pushing, the higher the pressure behind those vocal cords, which translates to more volume and force in your voice. It's like turning up the water pressure in a hose. The more you push, the stronger the stream comes out.
Why do people
It's a simple
poses for breath when speaking?
The more force you put behind it, the more the sound carries. Just takes a bit of balance so you don't end up shouting at your audience. Are you planning to demonstrate any of these breathing techniques in your presentation?
How does pressure influence a speech sound?
It basically acts as the volume knob. Higher pressure creates a louder, more intense sound, while lower pressure keeps things quiet and intimate. It also helps you maintain a consistent tone so your voice doesn't crack or fade out as you finish a thought. Do you want to know how that pressure changes when you're feeling nervous?
What happens to speech when breathing is difficult?
Everything starts to break down. When you can't get enough air, your phrases get shorter and your rhythm gets choppy because you're fighting for breath instead of focusing on the words. It can make you sound anxious or tired, and in extreme cases, your voice might just cut out entirely. Does that feel like a good way to wrap up the biological part of your presentation?
How do wind instruments uh, will be on air?
I'm guessing you're talking about wind instruments, right? Since they're basically just external versions of our own vocal tracks, you just need a way to push air through a tube and something to make that air vibrate like a reed or just the edge of a hole. Do you want to know about a specific instrument or just the general physics of how it works?
What is the role of air in music and language?
It's the common thread that turns raw energy into meaning. In language, air is the medium and the tool. It's what we sculpt to create words and what carries those words to someone else's ears. In music, it's the same thing, just shifted toward melody and rhythm. Both use the same basic physics of vibration and pressure to communicate a feeling or an idea. Do you want to explore how a musical note is actually similar to a spoken word?
How did early humans use a breath to communicate?
If you mean early humans, they likely used breathing in air in a lot of the same ways we do now, shouting to signal danger or using rhythms to coordinate work. They probably also relied heavily on nonverbal sounds, like grunts or sharp intakes of breath to convey urgency or emotion before complex languages even existed. Do you think that kind of raw sound based communication was more honest than the words we use today?
Why is the human voice unique?
I'm a bit confused. Do you mean why the way women's voices sound is unique, or are you asking about something else entirely?
What is the how do the mouth and tongue shape sound created by air?
Your mouth, throat, and nasal cavity are basically like a custom sound chamber. They take that raw vibration from your vocal cords and filter it, amplifying some frequencies and dampening others based on how you move your tongue and lips. It's why the same puff of air can sound like an O or an E just by changing the shape of the space inside your mouth. Do you want to know how the nose helps add that specific nasal quality to some sounds?
What is the resonance in speech?
Resonance is basically what gives your voice its unique color or quality. It's when the sound waves from your vocal cords bounce around the spaces in your throat and mouth, amplifying certain frequencies and making the sound richer and fuller. Without resonance, we'd all sound
How
like
does air
very thin,
contribute to
buzzing robots.
loudness and volume?
It's all about the flow and the pressure. The more air you maintain behind the sound, the more volume you can sustain. It's like keeping a steady stream of water coming out of a pipe. If the flow drops, the sound fades. That consistency is what allows you to hold a long note or a powerful sentence without your voice trailing off. Do you want to know how people train themselves to hold a note for a really long time?
How do different people have a different voice?
So it mostly comes down to the physical build of the instrument. Since everyone's vocal cords, throat, and mouth are slightly different shapes and sizes, the air vibrates and resonates differently for every single person. It's like how two guitars might be made of the same wood but still sound a bit different because of their unique build. Do you want to know how things like age or health can change that unique sound?
How does age affect breathing and speech?
As we get older, the physical instrument just changes. The vocal cords can lose some of their elasticity, and the muscles that control them can weaken, which is why voices often get thinner or shakier in older age. On the flip side, for kids, the vocal cords are shorter and thinner, which is why they have those higher, brighter tones. It's basically a slow transformation of the equipment we use to sculpt that air. Does that give you a good perspective for the age related part of your presentation?
What is the relationships between air and hearing?
That sounds like a bit of a word puzzle. If you're talking about the literal air we breathe versus airing something out, like opening a window to let fresh air in, it's all about movement and renewal. But if you're thinking about airing a grievance or airing a show on TV, it's more about making something visible or audible. Which one were you thinking of?
How does pollution affect our breathing and communication?
If you mean the potential for how we use our breath, it's really about the emotional weight we put behind it. A sharp, shallow breath can signal panic, while a deep, slow exhale can calm an entire room. It's the invisible layer of meaning that tells the listener how we're actually feeling before we even say a word. Do you think that's a useful point to include in your presentation?
Why is clean air important from vocal health?
Sorry, I'm lost. What did you mean by cleaner and potent?
How do emotion affect the breathing patterns?
Motion usually speeds everything up. When you're moving, your muscles need more oxygen, so your breathing patterns naturally shift from slow and steady to fast and shallow. In terms of speaking, that's why you sound winded if you try to give a presentation while walking fast. Your body is prioritizing survival over sculpting sounds. Do you want to know how athletes or performers manage their breath while they're in motion?
What role does air play in storytelling and public speaking?
It's the secret weapon for building tension. By using air to control your pace, like taking a long dramatic pause or letting your voice trail off into a whisper, you can actually lead the audience's emotions. It's the difference between just reading a story and actually making the room feel it. Do you want to know how to use a pregnant pause to make your audience lean in?
Okay. How has language
Got
evolved
it.
along, alongside human breathing abilities?
I think you're asking how language evolved alongside our ability to breathe and speak, right? It's a fascinating loop. As our ancestors developed better control over their diaphragm and vocal tracts, they could create more complex sounds, which allowed for more complex ideas. Essentially, the biological hardware for breathing evolved just enough to let the software of language really take off. Do you think that fits into the way you're structuring your presentation?
Okay, everyone. So
You've
thanks for
covered a lot.
watching this my listening and thanks for watching this video. And okay, bye, Tata, see you. And thanks for watching. Okay,
You're so
bye.
welcome.